Today I have two Canyon cardigans to share with you. They're both navy, they're different views. One is for myself, one is for my sister-in-law, and there's lots of sewing here. One of the aspects I'm sharing is gathering knits with elastic, so stay tuned. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina. This is Lifting Pins and Needles, a channel all about sewing, limitless sewing. In this channel I am sharing with you 2 videos a week, usually all about sewing, techniques, ways that I sew with all the experience that I've acquired over the last 3 decades. So there can be a lot of practical sewing content here for you. So if you enjoy the video while you watch, you can consider subscribing and tapping on the bell so you don't miss out the new videos as they go up live. I have made 2 cardigans. One is for myself, one is for my sister-in-law. I offered to make her one and gave her the choice of color, and I purchased the fabric locally. This is the Canyon Cardigan from Love Notions, and it's a Feature Friday pattern for today that is half off or $5 only for today, Friday. I actually bought this pattern in 2018. I've had it for a while. This cardigan has 3 views. As usual, these patterns have lots of options for you to choose from. They all use the common bodice pieces for views A, B, and C. What's cool about the bodice is that at the back, it's not cut on the fold. The back is cut with a center back seam with shaping there, and it removes some excess from the waist at the back. And I think that's great. Any shaping incorporated into knit patterns is awesome. This cardigan at the back, at the skirt piece on the back, has a little inverted box pleat there. I think is really adorable, and it's a really nice feature to have at the back of a cardigan. Cardigans can get a little bit boring sometimes, but this is not a boring cardigan. What differs to the views is the skirt piece that goes attached to the bodice. So view A is just a normal skirt piece, a long line style cardigan. In view B, the skirt piece is gathered onto the bodice, and in view C, it uses the same skirt piece as view B, but instead of being gathered, it's sewn onto the bodice and the excess is left to hang in the front like a waterfall effect, asymmetric. That is my jam, of course. Now view C, I have had ready to wear cardigans that look similar to this. I actually cloned one of these while I was in Bolivia. I made a gray jersey one. Unfortunately, I lost that pattern during the move, the pattern that I made from the clone, and I don't have that cardigan anymore. So I was super happy to see this pattern that looks so much like a style I already like. For the sleeves, there's full length, 3/4 length, and a sleeveless view. The bodice has a different line to cut the arm side for the sleeveless view, but to keep it consistent the way I sew, I never actually consider the arm side that is provided in a pattern. I usually cut the arm side that is just meant to be made with the sleeve piece, and then I try it on, and then I customize the shape and the width and the amount of coverage that I like. That's my approach to all sleeveless garments. That's just how I like to do it, and that way I'm sure that the arm side that I'm making is the one that I really wanted. So yeah, but there is a sleeveless view with a sleeveless arm side there drawn onto the bodice pieces. For those people that like pockets, there are these pockets there in the seam that unites the bodice to the skirt piece, and they look super easy to sew up in the instructions. They do look super easy. So if you like to do pockets, there's an option there. I never opt for that option, you know. And there's also elbow patches you can sew on. Now about the fabrics, the pattern mentions fabrics of different weights with some drape. This can give you a vast array of options. I wouldn't go to the really thin, hard to work with ITY or rayon spandex. They're just not going to hold the structure. I think everything's just going to flop, you know. I personally wouldn't go for those. In my case, I chose Ponte Roma because it was what I found here that was available. This summer, I brought with me minimal clothing, barely any clothes at all, and I noticed they were mainly navy blue, and I needed a top I'd, wear, sleeveless. So navy blue was my choice, and when I asked my sister-in-law what color she wanted the same. So we have sort of similar cardigans in the same fabric, in the same color. I have a fabric here that I love, that I purchased here in Chile. Very hard to find sweater knits in Brazil, almost impossible, if not impossible, at least where I'm shopping. And it's beautiful. You can see the texture there. and it's printed on one side and white on the other. They are printed on one side and light color on the other, either gray or light brown or white or whatever the base they were using. So for view C that has a waterfall asymmetric front, you will see the wrong side of the fabric when you walk, when you move, just the way it hangs. So I wouldn't go for these for that view. I would make views A and B with this one because they just hang normally, they're hemmed, the wrong side stays touching your body. I'm really sensitive to the wrong side showing. I have seen ready to wear garments that as a design, you know, part of whatever drape feature, you can see the wrong side of the fabric, and sometimes it's different, and I really dislike that. So I'm really careful to not have that happen to me in my sewing because I can make the decisions, you know. For the sizing, this pattern comes from sizes extra small to triple extra large, and that will take you to a bust of 49.5 and hips of 51.5 inches. The pattern is roomy. There aren't finished garment measurements provided, but it is quite easy to measure the bodice pieces. The skirt design is meant to have a lot of ease, so you mainly have to worry about the bust and the waist measurement if you really want to measure the pattern to choose your size. But it recommends choosing on the high bust. I measured my sister-in-law super accurately and she falls into the size small, and I'm a large. I'm always a large for Love Notions patterns. What you're going to see in Up Close and So Personal is a lot of sewing goodness. Among all that, you'll see how I did length adjustments on this pattern, an overview of the construction of views B and C, how I trued the hem of the sleeves, how I used elastic to gather the skirt. For view B, it makes it much easier. How I did a mitered corner according to instructions, super easy, and my preferred way of binding an armhole in a sleeveless garment that is made with a structured knit. So there's plenty to see in a short-ish video. It's not that long, so let's hop into that. These are the two bodice pieces for the cardigan. This is my one in size large. This is the front and that's the back. And there is a line that marks the bust line on this pattern. I compared that to mine and it was an inch higher than mine is. As usual, that's a very common adjustment for me to do. Plus, I still have to lengthen this bodice anyway, about an inch. So I just cut the bust line and spread apart and added some paper and added an inch right there. For my sister-in-law's, this is a size small. I also added an inch at the bust line, not because her bust is higher or lower, it's just right, but because she also needs to lengthen the bodice. So I just went ahead and made the same modification. I could have added the inch down here maybe, but I just did the same thing to keep it consistent. Because I lengthened both bodices of my cardigan and my sister-in-law's by an inch, I should lengthen these by half an inch there because this is cut on the fold. So that's twice. If I lengthen half an inch, I'll get an inch extra on both sides, you know. But I'm lengthening an inch anyway on both because I'd rather be safe than sorry. The stretch on my Ponte isn't that great, so I would rather just adjust as I go, and if I have excess length I can remove at the center back seam. These are the sleeve pieces. That's a size large, that's a size small. For my sister-in-law's sleeve I didn't make length modifications, but when I was tracing the small from this one, it has all the sizes, I did true the hem here. This is how the sleeve ends, and you have that slant there. So if you were just to leave it like that and then fold it up to hem, see all that space that you lose there when you fold it up? So when you adjust and add the same shape there, see there, you just fold and add the same shape there to the sides. Then when you do your hem, you don't have any puckers or anything. So that's what I've done to that as an extra step. And for mine, I just wanted an extra inch at the length, so I just added an inch here. That's going to be the hem, and I drew the seams there. But I mean, I have my sleeve prepared. This version will be sleeveless. I just have it ready to use at a later date when I decide to put a sleeve on mine. These are the skirt pieces of the cardigans, and I have the small on top of the large that I traced out. The difference between the view B and C is only the way it's sewn onto the bodice of the cardigan. It's not that they're separate pattern pieces. So for the small, I'm going to make view B which is just gathering all this onto the bodice and doing a little center pleat there. For mine, I'm doing the asymmetric one, view C. That's where the bodice reaches when you sew it on without gathering or anything. You still do the pleat there, and then all that is in excess there becomes that asymmetric waterfall. So it's just the way it's sewn. It's actually the same pattern piece. If I wanted to make myself a VB, all I'd have to do is gather this onto the bodice, but I prefer not to do the gathers. I'll do the asymmetric one, and the gathers will be for my sister-in-law because that's what she chose. I've got skirt pieces here on top of the pressing board. These are for the size small, the one that's going to be gathered onto the bodice, but they are exactly the same. They all have a center back seam that gets sewn at 3/8 of an inch. I have serged them previously and I'm going to be pressing those open. And then there's a little mark on the pattern to just baste a little pleat. So I just used a basting stitch right there. And I'm going to be pressing this open and then pressing the pleat open. I have already serged the bottom there, so it's ready to be hemmed when it's time. But for this one, I'll be sorting out this little pleat and then having a lot of fun gathering this onto the bodice. One of the options to gather the skirt for view B is to use elastic, and I think that is awesome that it's in the instructions because I think it's the easiest to get even gathers on this thick fabric. If I just did a gathering stitch and tried to do it by hand, it would be really hard. So I've already done this on one of the halves of the skirt. This is the center back where there's a seam and that little pleat there. So I've done that on this half, and it's not excessive gathers in this style, but you can see how it's going to look sort of. So all I did was measure from here to the end, to the edge there, and I'm using metric here. That was 68 centimeters and 68 centimeters, and I want to cut an elastic about 60% of that, so 0.6, and I get 41 centimeters. So this is the length of that elastic, 41 centimeters. I've just divided it in half and placed the edge sort of almost to the edge. This is where the neckband is going to go. And I divided all this into two, and I matched that half there and that half almost to the center there. So you can see all that excess on the skirt that's going to be gathered onto the elastic. Then I just stretch the elastic as I sew it on right to the edge. This is just whatever elastic, I just cut it narrower, and it has to be smaller than 3/8 so that then I can sew this on without the elastic getting in the way. I'm using a straight stitch but a long length of a stitch, and I'm just going to start over here, take this pin out, and then I have this pin here marking the middle of the elastic and the middle of this skirt piece, and I just stretch that out, stretch the elastic until it matches the length. Now I'm always keeping the elastic right on the edge. So that's half done, and then the other half. Now I started the elastics around there because on the center back it's quite bulky and there's that pleat, so I didn't want the gathers to go through that. So the gathers start just where the pleat is and then go off to the sides like that. Now that this is all gathered up, I just have to match it to the bottom of the bodice. I've already done the elastic as you saw, and I've just pinned it onto the bodice of the cardi, and it just matches everywhere, you know, on the edge there. I didn't want the gathers to start right there because the band is going to be there. These two need to match. And I'm just going to have to sew this on carefully with the gathers up on top, 3/8 seam allowance, and then just attach on the neckband for this one. I have already pressed the hem here, so that will probably be the last steps. I have already set in the sleeves, and I didn't put them in on the flat, I did them on the round. I always prefer that. So that's all done. It's just this seam and the neckband and the hem basically. For my version, the asymmetric one with the waterfall, you need to miter two of the corners there, and it's super easy. You have your corner there and you fold it onto itself, right sides together in there, and you have the foldy bit on the top, and then this is the hem. I've already serged that. So from the tip inwards you measure 1 inch, and then you just sew straight down. Right there, there's a 90-degree angle right there, and that's what you sew, and then you just trim away that and flip it, and you have a perfect mitered corner there. So this is the pattern instructions. You didn't even need to take measurements of anything, just follow there what it says. It's super clear there, the fold on the top, the slant bit there that I already serged, measure an inch in and sew straight down. Super easy. This is a skirt for UC that I've already got semi like pressed and ready to be put onto the cardigan without gathering. And there is a mark right there, a little notch mark, and that's where the bodice comes up to, and the rest just hangs down, and that creates the waterfall. So I have already sort of serged things, pressed them, and I've done the mitered corners there that you've seen me do. I've done 2 of those right there to make it really neat, and I have already serged and pressed the hems up. Over here I have sewn that center back seam. I had the basting stitch in there that made that little pleat, and I've pressed that, and on the right side it looks like that. And now I'm going to remove that basting stitch after I've sewn this onto the bodice, and then the pleat will just come out of the seam and it will just open up there. Matched up the center back seam of the bodice with the pleat at the back, and then it goes all the way to a mark on the pattern that's like a circle, and that's where the bodice stops, and then you have this excess here that will become the waterfall, and then the band goes all the way there. It's the same on this side. There's an excess of the skirt, and I just have to sew this, attach the neckband, do the hem, and I'm doing the sleeveless, so one of the last steps will be to attach the binding on. These are the 2 neckbands. I'm pressing them. This is the one for view B, and this is the one for view C. The difference is that view B is narrower and longer, and view C is wider and shorter, but they're constructed the same. They're sewn on the center there because you have 2. So that's been sewn, and on the ends they both get folded onto each other, right sides together, and just sewn there on the ends. So that's like a smaller one, that's a bigger one, and then this gets flipped. This is how they look all finished and pressed. There is a seam that's going to go on the center back, and this is the end that's already closed off and nice and clean, that will go onto the cardigan. And the same with this one, it's just narrower and longer for view B. Still has a seam right there as well. This is the sleeveless armhole of my cardigan, and I just used the binding pattern pieces that they provide there. I closed them off there and just added them on right sides together to the arm side. I sewed them on with 3/8 seam allowance as usual, and I just clip, you know, so I can turn the curves. But then this is how I do my binding different. It's my preferred way, and I've done it like this before with really structured knits. And I actually don't get rid of the seam allowance because you could actually fold that in like that. But I think the binding is too wide to turn the curve in the way I like it. So I leave the seam allowance there, and I get this and wrap it around the seam allowance there. And then I pin it. And I do this all the way around, making sure all the seam allowance is in there. And that's why I've serged one of the edges here. So I have the raw edge that I stitched onto the arm side, and then the other side is serged. And so that's just how I start wrapping all this around the seam allowance. So the seam allowance is there. So whatever shape and size of the armhole I had, that's how it's going to stay. It's not going to get narrower at the shoulder or anything because I'm not folding it in at the stitching line like that. And then I go and sew top stitch, and I have done it already on the other side, so you can see how it turns out. I don't have an edge foot. I'm just sewing freehand like I used to before. So that's how it looks there, and on the other side it's just catching the other side and the edge there that's been serged. I don't want to fold this in again because it can get super bulky, and I think this is nice and neat inside with that serged edge. I have some kitty hairs there. I have to get rid of them. I'll show you my sister-in-law's one first. This is view B, the size small. This one has the long sleeves. Because I did through the hem, the sleeve lies perfectly. You know, there's no puckers or anything. It follows the shape of the slant of the sleeve. So whenever a pattern does not have that, I just do it myself. It's an easy thing to do. The neckband fit perfectly onto the cardigan. For construction, I didn't show this. You're meant to pin the center of the neckband to the center back right there. So you put a pin there, and then you put a pin here at the bottom, and you start pinning up to a notch right there. And you do that on both sides. So from a point there around here, the neckband gets a little bit shorter, and then you have to stretch the neckband to match this upper part of the neckline, and that makes the neckband lie really nice and flat against your body. It's not going to flop open or be like with excess. These bands always need to be shorter than what you're sewing them onto so that they bring it all in, you know. And I think it's really clever the way they design that, to start at one point up to the other and ease in through there rather than having that done on the whole band. And actually you shouldn't be stretching a band on the front because your whole cardigan might look weird. It would like pull up and stuff. This is the area where the band needs to be nice and flat against your body. So I think that's a great feature of this pattern, and it's the same for all the views. There is a center back seam that you can see, and at the back you have that pleat there. It's very small, and there is a seam there in the middle. These skirt pieces are super wide. There is no way you could cut that skirt piece on the fold, even with the size extra small. This is a small, and I couldn't fit it across like fabric that's 60 inches wide. It just wouldn't go across. So you had to cut one and then cut the other separately. So it is a tad fabric hungry, a tad. So that's why that seam in the middle there has to be there. There's no other way. I did top stitch the neckband down there to keep it flat. I am working with bulky-ish fabric. Overall, it was super easy to put together. The elastic does help with gathers on these types of fabrics. And the fact that it's mentioned in the instructions, I thought, yeah, perfect, I'll do that. I've done it before. I think it's a great trick for bulky fabrics like this, or for any knit fabric. I don't use clear elastic for that. I just use regular 1/4 inch elastic, and then I just pull it out. I don't leave it there on the seam. I just take it out, you know.
This is starting to wear on me. You've been raining down like hail. I'm weak. I have tried to give you my soul, but you can't love something you own. It's too late to repair what we made.
This is view C, this is my one, same fabric, same navy. So it has the same bodice pieces, and then the skirt, as you saw, is just sewn on normal with the same pleat on the back, and it just goes along the bodice. And there comes a point there with these little circle marks on the pattern where it keeps going like that, and it's just excess. And then you have to just put the neckband or on this shape right there, and all this excess here becomes that asymmetric waterfall. And I was saying sometimes the wrong side does show when you're wearing it, and the fact that navy Ponte is the same on both sides, I had a hard time looking at the fabric and, you know, keeping my pattern pieces right. I had to scribble with chalk some lines to signify that that was the wrong side, so I wouldn't get confused. So the wrong side does show, and that's perfect for this type of design. I love doing the mitered corners. It was super easy. The instructions there on the pattern just make it easy, like you don't even have to think. Really good. I did hem both just with a straight stitch. I actually sewed all these cardigans normally with a straight stitch. I didn't use a zigzag or stretch stitch. In the previous video I showed you my parents' little kitten, the yellow one, the boy. Now I have the little girl to show you. Look at this fluff. Look at this. Oh, she's so cute. She's crazier than him. Just thought I'd share the cuteness. I've been getting these hairs all over the clothes I'm making now. They still don't have like proper names yet, you know. And you saw how I did my preferred binding method for the armholes. I've done this before with other cardigans I've made in Ponte, Roma. I will link to a video that shows this method in more detail, like more detail, more than I showed here. So you can see it if you're interested. And the seam allowance is there. I didn't get rid of the seam allowance, you know. And I determined my own arm size, so I knew that that was the width that I wanted. I didn't want it narrower, so I didn't want to get rid of seam allowance by binding it, by folding it in, if you get what I mean. The photos you're gonna see is me standing in front of these boysenberry, what are they called? Plants? I don't know. But look at this. They are just the juiciest, yummiest berries. Oh, look at this. Yum.
Time flashed by and I woke up on the other side of the moon. The sun don't rise on
The neckband here on the top lies super flat and nice against my body. As I said, there was a notch here and a notch there. And then this neckband was a bit shorter in this area where you had to stretch it to match the neckline, and that's what makes it lie super nice. This is the arm side that I like. This is the coverage that I like. A lot of coverage, by the way, as you can see. That's how I like it. I hope you can see the whole thing. The sun is a bit blinding me, but this is how this asymmetric business looks here on the front. You can see how that excess of the skirt turns into this right there. It's a perfect rectangle basically, and this is where I've done the mitered corner there. That was super fun to make, and it makes it really nice and clean, you know. And I just love this style. I have owned cardigans like this before, and it's just totally my jam. At the back you can see that little center back pleat there. That's really adorable. And that's it. I really like it. If you like this pattern and you want to give it a go, you have the right fabric, you think it's a style that suits you, you can purchase this pattern through my affiliate link down below. At no cost to you, I make a small commission from that sale, and that directly supports me in this channel and what I do here, you know. I'm always buying fabric and supplies. It's never ending really. So you can do that if you want to. Otherwise, you can just go to the website and get the pattern there if you want to have it half off today. Let me know in the comments below. Are you a cardigan fan? Do you like making them? I have recently bought a ton of sweater knits, not a ton, but a few, and I have several cardigan videos planned ahead. I have some patterns that I've been really wanting to make, but I didn't have the fabric in Brazil. I have the fabric now, so I'm going to be making some for my mum, some for myself, so look out for those. I'll see you soon on Monday, I think, with another video. Until then, happy sewing. Bye.